So let's go now to our second major session, which is, we're incredibly lucky to have with us today three wonderful speakers who are going to share with us their experience of integrating climate action and sustainability into curriculum. And first of all, we're going to hear from Dr. Scott Blair, who's an American in Paris with a long professional career in study abroad. Then we're going to hear from Simone Hacket in the Netherlands, who's done fantastic work on collaborative online international learning. And last but not least, we will hear from Professor Marianne Mensah, who is also one of the founding members of CANIE. So I'll hand over now to session 2. Thank you.
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Scott Blair here in Paris, France, and I welcome you to this short session entitled From the Ground Up, Practical Tips for Embedding Sustainability Literacy into the Course Syllabus. And to help you understand these practical tips, I'm simply going to guide you through 10 changes I made to the syllabus of a course I teach on international human rights here in Paris. And you'll see the newly added language is highlighted in yellow. So let's begin. First of all, change number 1, course title. The original title, as you see, was Human Rights, Universal Principles in World Politics, but now it's called Human Rights and Responsibilities, Universal Principles and Global Challenges. These changes help highlight the ecological and global systemic context in which human rights, of course, operate. Many other types of title renditions could be imagined as well. Change number 2, course prerequisites. I used to require that students have previously taken only one course in international relations and a course in recent world history. Now I advise them to have taken, in addition, one course in environmental studies or sustainable development. This helps set learning expectations for students and gives them more of an idea of what type of content they are going to encounter. When we move into the course description, let me pull this up for you here. This provides us lots of opportunities to highlight new approaches to the subject in light of the climate crisis. When we're, for instance, defining the context of our specific course subject. As you see, traditionally, this was a course providing a survey and analysis of problems and challenges of setting and upholding universal standards of respect for international human rights within contemporary world politics. But now we are saying that the politics, the world is characterized by climate disruption, global pandemics, and collapsing biodiversity. This has an impact on this topic. Or in my description where I'm listing major human rights treaties, the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration, the 1966 Covenants, as well as other international treaties that uphold human rights under international law. You see, I am now specifically making reference to the COP21 Paris Accords and of course the UN SDGs that are critical to achieving human rights in the 21st century. Also in my syllabus description here, when I'm highlighting emergent conceptual problems, whether we're taking a Western approach or a Marxist approach or a Global South approach to human rights, you'll see here I am suggesting that we now need to pay particular attention to certain ecological approaches, such as the problem of balancing human rights against animal rights, the needs of earth biodiversity, and sustainable development generally. In terms of identifying new threats to human rights, we historically tend to look at the Cold War era, the war on terror, but of course now we need to look at environmental threats, emphasizing the challenge we are faced with global pandemics, the climate crisis, and the destruction of wildlife. In terms of change number 4 now, moving on, learning objectives and outcomes. This is very important because this is where we can allow ourselves to bring real intentionality into the student learning objectives that we define here. So I won't walk you through all of these, but you can see here that we now want to apply eco-critical and non-anthropocentric analysis to traditional human rights laws. We need to bring in the context of the SDGs. Another objective here, critically assess the implications of the Anthropocene era on traditional human rights. And again, once again, balancing human rights against the rights of other Earth life forms and habitats. So at the end of this description of the learning objectives here, I'm saying that the goal in this course obviously is to become familiar with these traditional issues in international human rights and how this affects the larger field of global politics. But of course, we now know this takes place within the context of creating and imagining a sustainable Earth community. Moving on, change number 5, instructional format. Here, of course, I am being very explicit and intentional here. We are going to use eco-pedagogical approaches, indigenous knowledge in our teaching and learning agenda. And when we visit human rights centers or buildings or organizations here in Paris, like Amnesty International, we're going to be adding to this organizations focused on sustainable development, like UNESCO or Extinction Rebellion. Change number 6 under forms of assessment. Here you'll see as well some traditional forms of assessment. But now, because students ask all the time, will this be on the test? Here, indeed, it will be on the test through an SDGs quiz, for example, and a pre and post testing of the student sustainability literacy using the Sully test tool. And you can visit that at that website as indicated. When I have them do paper guidelines as well, and what type of research paper they're going to write. Here you see the list of traditional things that I want them to achieve, guidelines to follow. But I'm also saying I want them to include insights drawn from critical eco-pedagogy and environmental or eco-literate research. Obviously, the textbook is a huge determinant of student focus as well. There you see the old textbook and now the new one, Sustainable Development Goals and Human Rights, that again places the topic of human rights within this larger reality of fighting global poverty, health, gender equality, working conditions, climate change, pandemics. And the SDG goals, of course. And we can continue this as well when we speak about our additional readings here and there. We can make any number of additions to the student readings in terms of recent publications like Kohlberg's Six Extinction, Animal Liberation, Naomi Klein's This Changes Everything, Silent Spring, and of course many green resources and UN SDG web resources as well. And then, of course, the point is, change number 10 is to embed this material and these discussions into clearly articulated daily work and student academic requirements through class lectures and class discussions. So our conclusion here is quite simple. Students become more eco-literate and learn how to view the world through the lens of the SDGs when we use intentionality in embedding such learning outcomes into the basic structure, the delivery, and the assessment of core course content. And this applies to all course subjects, areas of concentration, and traditional academic disciplines. So there you go, just a few ideas that might bring some inspiration in your own work in changing, revising, and improving your own course syllabi in lines with the needs of the climate crisis and collapsing biodiversity. It's a big agenda, but we all need to work together on this. Thanks so much, and thanks for listening.
Hello, everybody. My name is Simone Hacket. I am lecturer and a researcher at the Hague University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. Today, I'm going to give you a presentation on virtual exchange, collaborative online international learning, COIL, a sustainable and inclusive way to internationalize education. So first of all, what is virtual exchange, COIL? So virtual exchange is actually an umbrella term used to describe technology-enabled sustained people-to-people education, in which sustained communication and interaction takes place between individuals or groups who are geographically separated. Many different initiatives fall under this umbrella, and the one I'm discussing today is Collaborative Online International Learning, COIL. So first of all, what is it and why are we using it? So a teaching and learning tool that helps students and educators develop intercultural competence across shared multicultural online learning environments. In that sense, it is it can be seen as an internationalization at home tool, which helps students develop intercultural competencies at home online rather than going abroad to acquire them. It involves academics and students who are geographically separated, collaborating together online. It adds an international dimension to regular classes, either online classes or face-to-face physical classes, or a combination of both. It's integrated, embedded in the regular coursework and the regular courses that are offered by universities. But it involves the co-design of a collaborative online international learning assignment, which is developed by two academics or more who are geographically separated and develop this assignment online together to offer their students. And within this assignment, their students will work together on both sides to complete the assignment. Well-designed collaborative learning assignments are key in students developing intercultural competence. It needs to be, the learning happens through collaboration, through social interaction and completing the assignment. Therefore, the assignments need to be complex so that the assignment cannot just be completed by one student, but students need to depend on each other to complete the assignment. They need to rely on it to complete the assignment. And the COIL is network-based, meaning that academics use their networks to find partners to develop these courses, either their university study abroad, student exchange partnerships, or their own discipline, their own research networks. Why are we doing it? So prior to COVID, only 10 to 22% of students went abroad to acquire intercultural competencies, either on study abroad or on internships abroad. And that left 78 to 90% who were not traveling abroad to develop, to achieve these or acquire these competencies. So how do we ensure that we're offering education that is inclusive and that we are ensuring that all of these students, all of our students receive or acquire intercultural competencies and get an international experience? A solution for this would be COIL, if embedded correctly within our programs. If we think about the environment and sustainability and taking the global warming seriously and taking social responsibility in that sense, and then we really also need to rethink internationalization, how we're offering it at the moment, and reconsider whether we really should be encouraging our students to fly abroad, or even making it mandatory within international programs for our students to fly abroad. If we look at Robin Shields' paper from 2019 on student mobility, he estimated that the gases produced from student mobility are equivalent to the total emissions released by countries such as Croatia or Tunisia. This is only talking about the 10 to 22% of students who actually go abroad. It's excluding all of the scientists and the academics and the international policy advisors who are also flying abroad to conferences, to meetings, to visit other partner universities. So this is quite a significant estimate and something that we really need to consider if we want to be socially responsible and consider our environment. In that sense, we need to look for alternative ways to develop have our students develop intercultural competencies, as opposed to flying abroad on a study abroad or an internship abroad. If we want to look at COIL as this alternative, we first need to look at what level of intercultural competencies the universities or employer require from students, and can we use COIL to meet these requirements? If we can, that is fantastic, and COIL can be seen as an alternative. However, we first need to do further research into COIL. Right now, some research has been done on virtual exchange COIL, but more needs to be done. I'm doing a controlled study on COIL's effectiveness in helping students develop intercultural competencies. Other questions that I'm considering as well: what competencies do the students develop, and at what level? How do they develop these competencies? So collaborating with one another, communicating with one another through this process. How do they learn? How do they develop these competencies? And what is influencing them in developing these competencies as well? And we get answers for these, we can provide educators with additional grounding for further implementation and better practice of COIL. We can also get more funding and resources for more quality COIL courses, and of course, offer an alternative way to develop intercultural competencies at home instead of encouraging students to fly abroad to acquire them. So that's it from me in this very short 5-minute presentation. I look forward to any questions that you might have, or if you're interested in developing COIL courses or want to know more information about that, or if you're carrying out research or want to carry out research into COIL, I would be very interested in talking to you. Thanks very much, and that's it.
My name is Marianne Mensah, and I teach climate change to international students at the Sustainable Design School and at Université Côte d'Azur. Prior to joining academia, I worked for an international organization on sustainable development projects with a positive impact on climate. And today, I would like to share my experience in shaping a climate change educational program for international students. Do you remember when you were a student and you were given the challenge of solving a problem? Do you remember engaging all your creativity, your knowledge, your energy in finding a solution? This is the type of energy my students are unleashing today. And in this slide, we see Diana Carrion-Reis presenting her diploma at the SDS. The central question in shaping a climate course is how to empower students to become actors of the transition to a low-carbon society. And first, I would like to highlight the need for innovative pedagogy. I haven't always created enthusiasm in describing the IPCC scenarios or the potential disruption of global warming. In the opposite, I faced reaction of anxiety, stress, numbness, all reactions that are detrimental actually to learning and engagement. And these have been very well analyzed by Per Espen Stoknes, a psychologist from the Norwegian Business School, who called them apocalypse fatigue. And so innovative pedagogy are as important as developing a relevant content. And for this, I asked myself how to make climate science understood by students who are not scientists or who don't have this domain as their major. I looked at resources on websites such as UNCC Learn, and I also looked for innovative tools developed by organizations such as La Fresque du Climat, the Climate Collage in English. And I found them very interesting because they allow students to map the cause and consequences of climate change in a very interactive way. In doing so, they realize the complexity of global warming, but they don't do it alone. They are able to interact with their peers and discuss and really engage in the process. I always make sure to study the cause and consequences of climate change at the local level and at the individual level, but I don't go from the global issue to the individual issue because I found that this was putting too much burden on the shoulders of the students. The second element I would like to highlight is the need to cover existing climate solution, whether in mitigation or in adaptation. The Drawdown project provides useful direction in existing solutions that are validated by renowned scientists. And in selecting the solution, it's always useful to choose the ones that are meaningful for students, meaning close to their domain of study, to their field of study, and that can be also implemented in their local context. And for instance, with my students in the Master Engineer for Smart Cities, I looked at solutions in the field of clean mobility in cities, while with my students, designers, I looked at a project in circular economy, and for this, I find the Ellen MacArthur Foundation website very, very useful. I also use a climate solution simulator, such as the one developed by Anne Rhodes at the Climate Interactive website. And the students usually appreciate very much this tool. The third element I would like to highlight is the need to go beyond knowledge and understanding and encourage students to conduct collaborative climate projects. They can be inspired by the 170 actions to combat climate change that can be found on the website of UN Geneva, or they can actually engage with local actors in real projects that are tackling real issues. And the Sustainable Design School adopt a project-based pedagogy in which students work with local actors such as NGO, businesses, local government, to provide their expertise to facilitate climate solution in this local environment. And here we can see on this mirror board the students' work on climate mitigation in Nice, where students actually recommended some solutions to facilitate the implementation of the city climate strategy. On this page, I made a summary of all the resources mentioned earlier. And as a conclusion, I would like to say that the coming decade is going to be full of transformation for our students, but also full of opportunity to build a low carbon society that is equitable, that is more respectful of the environment. And it's up to us, international educators, to provide them with the tools that will empower them to become actors of the transformation.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much to Scott, Simone, and Marianne. Super looking forward to being joined by them on the screen. There they are. Marianne, Scott, Simone, how are you? Good morning, afternoon. The questions are coming in fast and furious, so we will get right to it. Scott, quick question for you. That was great. Thanks so much. One of the questions in the Q&A came up, which was, when did you start teaching this new course? And how have you noticed a difference in student engagement with respect to eco-literacy and learning outcomes?
Can you see me? Am
Yes.
I there? All right. Hi. Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, again, the purpose here is, again, to bring forward a number of practical tips on how we begin to think as faculty members, how to change the courses that we've been teaching over the years. Obviously, we update them from semester to semester. We often teach them in different settings at different institutions. So the purpose here, again, is to begin helping faculty members think about how we think along green lines in teaching subjects that ostensibly are not linked to the climate crisis. Obviously, human rights is a very relatively easy place to do that, given the interface of human rights and the sustainable development goals. So these types of changes I'm looking at not only in a course such as this, but even in other courses, for instance, in say a history of Paris. There are ways now, and new books are coming out on way in which we're trying to understand how urbanization, how it developed, how buildings were built in ways that reflected the climate and epidemics and energy challenges throughout the Middle Ages and the modern times. So it's not so much how we do this, one specific course, but how we begin thinking outside the box in all of our teachings. So this is a work in progress, and we'll see how this plays out over time. Because again, this is a process we want to move into place across the curriculum.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Simone. Yolanda Ryan Amindia asks from our chat. So thank you for those questions. Sort of in the Q&A. Thank you for those questions. Keep them coming. Our panelists will continue to answer them. If not here, then via chat, via the function. So are students being sort of included, or are they involved in the development of the COIL implementation? And how have they reacted to the programs, whether they are or not?
Yeah, so I just wrote my response in the chat box to the first part of the question. And from my knowledge and the courses that I have developed, or the ones that my colleagues have developed, we have not involved students in the curriculum development, so the development of the assignments yet. And the reason for that being is that it takes quite a long time to find the right partner, a partner that is compatible with you, and also finding the right course which the assignment is going to work in. So that's quite complex, and also getting to know each other, getting to know each other's cultures, getting to know each other's organizations. It's a very complex process at the beginning, not to scare anybody off, but it takes a bit of effort. So to develop that part of it, it would add another layer of complex issues if we were to include students at that part. That's not to say that we further on down the line that we would not include students in the development of the assignment, but just at the beginning to get things up and running. So far I haven't done it, and I haven't seen my colleagues doing it either. But of course, in a COIL course, anything can go a different direction. And I always ask my students, how's it going? And do you have suggestions for better communication lines, or to do the assignment in a different way? And always open to suggestions coming from our students. And the second part of the question was, how do students react to the program? Well, initially, from my experience of teaching, they are really, really excited at the beginning of the course, because this is something really different for them, and they're getting to communicate online with students abroad. But when they get into the nitty-gritty of the assignment, things start to change a little bit, because it becomes a little bit more, oh, they're not completing their work on time, the other side, or, I don't know why they said this or that. So they come into sometimes, not all groups, but they come into some conflicts, but that's part of the learning process. That's part of getting to, this international experience where they develop their intercultural communication skills, where they have to try different approaches to getting the job done. So yeah, so some would come out of it saying, oh, I didn't like that, but at the end of the course, when they reflect on the whole experience, and even down the line at the end of the year, when they reflect on the experience, they really think, wow, that was a great experience. I learned a lot from that experience, even though it took me out of my comfort zone. So maybe that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And it's funny, there's another question here, which you sort of alluded to, about sort of the most common internal challenges which need to be overcome in order to successfully implement COIL, right? So maybe there's the feedback loop for students, and maybe it's not right at the beginning. And we don't have a ton of time to unpack this, but this does feel like something we're going to talk about on the podcast at some point. And I sort of would encourage you to respond to that question. So thank you for that. That's, I think, super powerful and insightful. And it's, I think we all go through that journey of like, this is so exciting. And, oh, I'm learning something here, but I have to push through. So that's great.
Out of the comfort zone. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you. And Marianne, so you alluded at the end of your presentation that in the coming decades, there will be change. And I'm wondering if you can just shed a little bit of light on how you see the development of climate being integrated in sort of the education in the coming decade, and really what the biggest change will be. Where's your head at on that?
Well, I think as some of the speakers already highlighted, this generation of students is actually in demand of this type of education and this type of knowledge, of experience. They want to become actors. And so also the academic system will have to respond and will have to integrate climate change in their syllabus, like Scott actually demonstrated, or they will also develop a specific course on this topic within a program. And this was a little bit more the type of example I wanted to showcase, where actually I was asked by the coordinators of master's program to develop a specific course to add this competency in the outcome of the programs. And I think this will be actually mainstreamed. There is going to be a tremendous need for these competencies. And right now, the problem is actually to train the trainer. train also the professors. And for this, there are some international organizations, especially, for instance, in Europe, which are really thinking on how to scale up climate change education.
Wonderful. So thank you. There's so many ways it's going to change. So thank you for sort of scratching. We're all just scratching the surface here, and there's going to be a lot to discuss over the next little bit. But thank you, Marianne, for that response. And I just want to say thank you again to Scott and Simone for your presentations. That was really helpful. And with that, I think I will wish you a wonderful afternoon and evening, and welcome back, Ailsa, to the screen.